What if one of the most interesting places to retire in Albania is not Tirana, not Durrës, and not one of those places that everyone keeps talking about online?
What if it's a town that's sitting right next to Durrës the whole time, close to the coast, close to the airport, close to Tirana, close to everything retirees say they want, but somehow almost nobody mentions it?
Today, we are looking at Kavajë, Albania. And by the end of this video, we are going to decide whether this overlooked town deserves a spot on our Albania shortlist.
If you're researching retirement in Albania, Durrës comes up all the time. And honestly, we get it. It is coastal, it is close to Tirana, it is close to the airport, and it's one of the places that Americans seem to look at first.
And it is no secret that I love Durrës. But the more we research Albania, the more we are realizing something. The most obvious place may not always be the best fit.
So today we're looking just a little bit farther south, not hours away, not across the country, just down the road.
A town called Kavajë. And this one surprised us. Kavajë is located in western Albania in Tirana County. It sits south of Durrës, west of Tirana, and close enough to the Adriatic coast that you are still well within reach of beach life.
That location is what got our attention because if you are moving to Albania for retirement, location matters a lot. You do not want to feel isolated. You want access to transportation, healthcare, shopping, restaurants, the airport, and day trips.
And Kavajë has an interesting position. You are close to Durrës. You are close to Tirana. You are close to the airport. But you are not necessarily living right in the middle of tourist crowds.
And that is the question we kept coming back to. Could Kavajë give retirees access to the things they like about Durrës without the full Durrës summer crowds?
When we first saw Kavajë on a map, I'm going to be honest, it did not immediately jump out at me. It looked like one of those towns that people pass through on the way to going somewhere else.
Same. It didn't have the name recognition of Durrës. It was not showing up on every retired abroad list. And it wasn't being talked about like Tirana, Vlora, Saranda, or Durrës.
But sometimes that is exactly why a place becomes interesting, because the places with less hype can sometimes feel more livable.
Kavajë is not a tiny village. It is a real working town. The municipality has around 30,000 people, so this is not a place where you would completely be isolated from.
But it also doesn't seem like a big city either, and that is something that we keep looking for. We do not necessarily want the busiest place. We want a place that feels manageable, a place where we can have a routine and where people actually can live year round.
That's one of the things that interests me about Kavajë. It seems more local, less polished, and less tourist focused. More everyday Albania.
And for retirement, that could be a good thing, because we're not trying to move somewhere that feels like a vacation resort. We are trying to imagine our everyday life. Now let's talk about the weather, because this matters a lot to us coming from Texas. Kavajë has a Mediterranean style climate, and that means mild winters and hot, dry summers.
The hottest part of the year is usually July and August. Average summer highs are in the mid to upper 80s to the mid 90s. And that is in Fahrenheit. So yes, it does get hot.
And for those of you who use Celsius, who is not me, that is around 30 degrees Celsius, or a little bit higher during the hottest part of the summer.
Winter is much milder than what a lot of people in the US are used to. January averages are roughly in the 50s during the day with cooler nights.
So for us, again, coming from Texas, the summer heat is definitely something that we need to consider. But the winters sound much easier than a lot of places in Europe.
The bigger question for us would be humidity and how it feels in July and August. Because there is a difference between a number on a weather chart and actually living through it.
Exactly. We would want to see how comfortable it feels in the summer, especially if we're walking around town or going to markets or relying on public transportation.
Now, let's talk about cost of living. This is where Kavajë gets interesting, but also where we need to be very careful. There's not as much clear public information about Kavajë as there is for the bigger cities like Tirana or Durrës.
So we would not want to say you can definitely live here for this exact number because that would not be fair.
But in general, smaller towns in Albania tend to be less expensive than the most popular tourist and expat areas. And Kavajë appears to be more local and less international than places like Tirana or the busiest parts of Durrës.
That could mean lower everyday costs, groceries, coffee, local restaurants, basic services, things like that.
But the trade-off is that there may be fewer rental options available online. And if fewer foreigners are looking there, you may have to do more searching once you're there actually on the ground.
Which we have heard over and over again about Albania. The best rentals are not always online. Sometimes you really do need to be there, talk to locals, walk the neighborhoods, and work with someone who knows the area, aka Dan and Michelle. Housing is one of the biggest things that we would need to research before seriously considering Kavajë.
Because when people talk about Albania rentals, they usually talk about Tirana, Durrës, Flora, or Saranda. Kavajë does not have that same level of rental information.
But that may actually be part of the appeal. If fewer foreigners are looking there, there may be less pressure on long-term rentals.
Maybe, but we would have to verify that on the ground. The last thing we would want to do is assume that a place is affordable just because it's less famous.
So for us, Kavajë would be a place where we would probably have to visit for a bit to see if it is a place that would work for us. We would want to look at the apartments, walk the neighborhoods, see what's available, and find out what the real long-term rental market looks like.
And for retirees, I think the housing question would be, can we find something comfortable, safe, clean, and convenient without needing a car for every little thing? Healthcare is another important thing. Kavajë does have a hospital, which is important. That gives it an advantage over some smaller towns where you may have very limited medical access.
But if you needed more specialized care, we would probably still look toward Durrës or Tirana, especially Tirana, because that is where many of the larger private hospitals and specialists are located.
So for basic needs, Kavajë may be fine. For specialists, bigger tests, or more advanced care, we would want to access Tirana.
And that is another reason that the location matters. If you are 40 minutes or so from Tirana, that feels very different than being 3 or 4 hours away.
For retirees, that could be a major factor. You may not need major healthcare every day, but when you need it, you want to know where you are going.
So now let's talk about safety. While we couldn't find any detailed crime statistics specifically for Kavajë, we do know people that live there, and they have reported that they feel very safe and have no problems with anything walking around at night or things getting stolen or anything like that.
But we can look at nearby Durrës and Albania overall. Durrës tends to show a relatively low crime index on perception-based safety sites, and Albania is often described by travelers and expats as feeling safer than many people expect.
Now, that doesn't mean that crime does not exist. It does. Petty theft can happen. Scams can happen. And like anywhere else, you need to be smart.
Especially in crowded areas, public transportation, markets, and tourist zones.
But from what we have researched, safety would not be the biggest concern for us in Kavajë. The bigger concern would be fit. Would we feel connected? Would we feel comfortable? Would we be able to build a life there?
Transportation is one of the reasons Kavajë made us stop and look twice.
Yes, because it is close to a lot. Durrës is nearby. Tirana is nearby. The airport is reachable, and you are not cut off from the rest of the country.
That matters because we do not know yet whether we will buy a car right away, and more than likely, we may start without one.
So we always ask, can we get around? Can we get to doctors, shopping, and services?
From what we can tell, Kavajë is connected by roads and bus routes and sits in a useful corridor between Durrës and Tirana.
But this is one of those things we would definitely test in person because transportation on paper and transportation in real life are not always the same thing.
How often do buses run? Where do they stop? How easy is it to get a taxi? What happens in the evening? Those details matter when you are actually living somewhere.
Now let's talk about expats or immigrants. And this may be one of the biggest differences between Kavajë and places like Tirana or Durrës.
Kavajë does not seem like a major expat hub, at least not compared with the better known cities.
And that can be good or bad depending on what you want. If you want a big expat community, English speaking events, international restaurants, and lots of people going through the same process, Kavajë might feel too local.
But if you want a more Albanian day to day experience, it may actually be a better fit.
For us, I think we would want something in between, a little balance. We don't need to live in an expat bubble, but we also don't want to feel completely alone while adjusting to a new country.
So Kavajë might be better for someone who is comfortable being a little more independent, someone who does not need a huge expat network right outside the front door. When we research towns, we always try to picture daily life, not the highlight reels, not the drone footage, the normal Tuesday afternoons.
Where do we get groceries? Where do we drink coffee? Because we all know
We need
we need coffee. That's important. Can we walk around the town? Can we go sit in a square because we're old and that's going to be fun, sitting in a square and people watching? Can we find a pharmacy? Can we go out to dinner without making it a whole production?
Kavajë seems like the kind of place where daily life would be more relaxed, less touristy energy, more local daily life.
And that is something that we are really drawn to. We love the idea of having access to the bigger cities, but not necessarily living in the middle of one.
That may be one of Kavajë's biggest strengths. It is not trying to be the next big expat destination. It is just a real Albanian town in a useful location.
Now, let's talk about food because obviously we care about food.
Obviously,
Kavajë is in central Albania, close enough to the coast that you would likely see a mix of traditional Albanian foods, grilled meats, vegetables, dairy, burek, tabakozi, kofta, and seafood in the surrounding areas.
getting hungry.
I've been eating, well, snacked on our weekly live snack and chat, which if y'all don't join, you absolutely should. But bring a snack.
And one thing we have learned about Albania is that the food is very regional, very seasonal, and very tied to local life.
This area is also known for agriculture, so fresh produce could be a big part actually, of everyday life. And that matters to us because I want markets. I want tomatoes that actually taste like tomatoes. I want good bread. Matt wants good cheese. And I want strong coffee.
I want strong coffee too.
Which would you take more? Which would you, if you had to choose?
Well, we talked about this before.
Hold on. If you had to choose between coffee and cheese, which would you pick?
Cheese.
I would not. Cheese.
But I have to have coffee to wash it down, so
No.
I get them both. I get what I want. So if you're close to Durrës and the coast, that gives you even more options. Local everyday food in town and more variety when you want to go out somewhere bigger. Do a little party. Culturally, Kavajë seems to have more going on than people might assume. It has local history, religious sites, and strong community identity.
We also found references to folklore events and cultural activities in Kavajë, which is something that we would love to experience in person.
This is one area where we would want to be careful though. Kavajë is not like some cities that have a huge international festival calendar that everyone knows.
So instead of thinking of it as a big festival destination, we would think of it more as a place where you would experience local Albanian culture, music, food, community events, national holidays, the evening walk, coffee culture, and family life.
And honestly, that might be more meaningful if you are living there. Tourists, they look for big events. Residents, they notice the everyday culture.
So, as we said before, Kavajë also gives you access to nearby beaches, Durrës, Tirana, and other parts of central Albania.
So even if the town itself is quieter, you're not stuck. That is important.
Important. Sorry. Important. Emphasize the T. Important. You could have a calmer home base, but still do day trips. Go to Durrës for the waterfront. Go to Tirana for shopping or medical appointments. Or just head toward the coast when you want the beach.
And that's exactly the kind of setup a lot of retirees are looking for. Quiet when you want quiet, access when you need access. Now, let's talk about what could be difficult, because Kavajë is definitely not going to be for everyone.
First, it is less known. That means less information online, fewer YouTube videos, and fewer expat blogs. Fewer people saying, here is exactly what life is like here.
Second, there may be fewer English speakers than in Tirana or Durres, and that could make daily life harder at first.
Third, if you want a big international community, Kavajë may feel too quiet.
Fourth, rental research takes more effort. You may not find as many polished listings online.
Or any listings online. Haven't been there yet. We have to leave room for surprise.
Surprise!
A place can look good in research and feel totally different in person.
That is why we're not saying Kavajë is the answer. We're saying Kavajë is now on our radar.
I think Kavajë could appeal to retirees who want to be near Durrës but don't necessarily want to live in Durrës.
People who want a more local lifestyle, people who do not need a big expat scene, people who want access to Tirana and the airport, people who like quieter towns.
And people who are comfortable doing more of the work themselves, because in a lesser known town, you may need to be more patient. And as I say in every video, patience is Diane's middle name.
That means yes in Albania.
You also have to be more flexible, which we've also said in previous videos that I am that as well. And you have to be more willing to figure things out.
This is probably not the easiest place for someone who wants everything handed to them in English.
But for the right person, that may be exactly what makes it interesting.
So would we actually consider living in Kavajë? For me, maybe. I would at least want to see it first. Boots on the ground.
Not pants on the ground. Remember that? Pants on the ground, pants on the ground. Look like a cool cat. It's the same for me. I still really like Durrës, but Kavajë has something that interests me. It's close enough to the things that we need, but it may offer a more local, less touristy lifestyle.
And I think that is the key. Kavajë is not competing with Durres as a tourist destination. It is more of a question of livability.
Could this be a better everyday life town? Could it be a place where we could settle into a routine? Could this be a place that feels more like real Albania?
And those are the questions that make it worth researching.
The more we research Albania, the more we realize we can't just look at the places everyone talks about.
Because sometimes the best fit is not the most famous place. Sometimes it's just the town just down the road.
Kavajë may not be searched as much. It may not be on every retirement list. And it may not be the place that everyone is talking about.
But that might be exactly why it deserves a closer look.
So now we want to hear from you. Have you ever heard of Kavajë? Would you consider living in a lesser known Albanian town if it meant being close to Durrës, Tirana, and the airport?
And if you have been to Kavajë, or know someone who lives there, please leave a comment. We would love to learn from people who know the area better than we do.
Like Michelle and Dan Rodemsky, who has graciously gone around that town because they live there and have taken the majority of the pictures that you have seen in this video. We're going to tag them down in the description box below. Dan does have a channel if you want to go follow them. They are great people, and we cannot wait to meet them when we get over to Albania. So thank you, Dan and Michelle, for doing that for us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, Dan's part of the Desperados.
Yeah. And if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you can be notified of when our next video will be out, which will be next Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Central. We also have a live every Sunday at 1 p.m. Central. And we hope that you guys continue to follow along as we continue researching where we might live when we move to Albania in March. So you guys have a great week, and we will see y'all next Saturday. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Dream a little bit.